So I will cover the fire drill because I'm not sure if there's any new members in the gallery. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs, do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Please exit by the door in which you enter the room or by the fire exits, which are clearly indicated. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. Please make sure all your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. Apologies. Alan.
Well, the only formal apology I've received is Councillor Margrove.
Okay. Any other apologies? Sarah Doherty. The two. Okay. And Tricia Ellis. Yeah. Okay. So I move on to declarations of interest. I will need to disclose a pecuniary interest myself in regard to the item as a director of Wenbrook Community Centre, so I will be leaving the chair after I've received all the declarations of interest, and Councillor Hancock will be taking over. Any other member got any declarations of interest? Councillor Gutteridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a disclosory peculiar interest. I can speak but not vote, and when I've spoken I can leave after, and I've run this through Philip Richardson. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shepherd.
I need to declare a pecuniary interest with regards to my association with Wenbrook Community Centre.
Thank you. Councillor Haynes.
As Governor of the Nicholas Chamberlain Trust, who may be involved within this, I'm taking no part whatsoever, so I shall be leaving the meeting.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The same interest as Councillor Haynes, another interest because of my membership in the Nicholas Chamberlain Trust, like Councillor Haynes, I will be leaving the meeting.
Thank you. If there's no other members of declaration, I'll hand over to Councillor Hancock.
Oh, you drop me a cup of tea then.
So it's questions.
Normal rules, yeah.
Normal rules. This,
I've got it here.
Oh, you got it there.
Yeah.
Yes, it's normal rules. Yeah.
But no, they haven't had to be submitted, have they? No. Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you for your patience and waiting for this second meeting of the evening. I've got 4 speakers indicated to do so. We'll apply the normal rules according to the Constitution. The first speaker is Kyle Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. At best, I can only describe the borough plan presented to us today as an insult to the people of Nuneaton, Bedworth and Bulkington. The first thing that concerns me is the extremely unrealistic and pointless target of housing, 13,374. If I remember rightly, it was suggested that you only needed between 6,000 to 7,000 houses within the borough. So this decision to build over an extra 6,000 is pointless, and it means you're building housing that is not needed, and secondly, more housing will be built on Greenbelt, which will damage the environment and its habitats, not to mention the sudden increase in air pollution. I really cannot understand how we'll cope. Public services, schools and the NHS will all be strained by the sudden surge in the population. The thing that I am extremely annoyed by, though, is the extra housing you've accepted in terms of the duty of cooperation with Coventry, where we'll have to accept 2,360 houses to cope with Coventry's overspill. The fact of the matter is this: it will be the innocent residents of Bedworth, Bulkington and Nuneaton who will suffer just because Labour could not say one word, no. As a Bedworth resident, I take particular concern to the developments on School Lane, Hospital Lane, Ash Green and the Woodlands. I said it before and I'll say it again. This plan will put Bedworth in turmoil. I urge all members of the Labour group to vote in favour of the motion presented to us tonight by the Conservative group. You have to put the will of the people at the heart of things. The motion put forward by the Conservative group will ensure that your decisions are held to account. Mr Deputy Mayor, I could talk for hours on end about the problems of this borough plan, but I will conclude by saying one thing. It will be the people of the borough who remember the councillors, the members of the public and the party which stood up for residents in this time of crisis and who helped the communities which will be hurt by this horrid plan. Madam Mayor, it certainly will not be the Labour Party.
Thank. It's all right. It was when you rang me house the other day, I noticed. Would Councillor Aldington or Councillor Harvey wish to respond? No?
Just one thing, Mr Mayor. I happen to think the record shows that of all the district council leaders in Warwickshire, it was me who said no to the numbers being put forward at 4,000. It was the only one to refuse, and for that I was roundly abused by other Conservative councillors.
Jim Foster.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Well, as you know, I've been around here a long time. I've followed the plans for a good 10 years. And the one thing that strikes me is that back in 2012, when I first became a councillor, there were two plans put forward, two borough plans put forward. One from the officers, which had no building at all in the northeast of Nuneaton, and then the one that was turned over via politics by the Labour Party sitting here. And I've already mentioned, and it's been addressed in a very poor way, the science around diesel engines and the fact that they will have to be removed from the planet shortly. They will. Anyone who watched the One Show last night on the BBC will have seen all this. You may not understand it all, but it's fact. These things have to be removed. There are some organisations, I mentioned one of them earlier, Client Earth, who took the government to court last year in November and won the case. And it's having to be addressed. DEFRA are having to look at this right now, and they are doing that. The other organisation is one I joined myself, the Campaign for Protection of Rural England. Greenbelt has to be protected.
Excuse me, can I just pause you there?
Yes.
Mr Foster. Could I ask members to have the same respect as we ask other people when somebody's talking, please? Thank you.
Let me talk about infrastructure. Infrastructure, what does it mean? It means creating foundation. We are not creating foundation. The work on the northeast side of the town in St Nicholas, and St Nicholas Park, where the 850 odd houses are about to be built, has no park. It was St Nicholas Park. It's the park for the 1,000-year-old St Nicholas Church, the only Grade 1 listed building in the town, as all you people don't know. And there is no park. The park will be built on by housing. The A47, the only bit of it left over between Birmingham and halfway to Great Yarmouth, is the little bit between the Leicester Road Bridge and the A5. It needs bypassing in some way. Very, very difficult to do that today because you've built in such a crazy way. You've created urban sprawl on the north side of the town, right to the Hinckley border. There's nothing wrong with that. Hinckley town is doing extremely well. I guess we should become part of it. Nuneaton and Hinckley would make more sense than what we have today. Nuneaton and Bedworth doesn't work. There's this big gap between the two towns that you don't want to fill up at all in any way. It just doesn't make sense. I think I will leave it there. The science has to come in. Mathematics, the sciences I mentioned before.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a member from the public. I live in Nuneaton. And from what I've witnessed over the past couple of months, I believe that the approach used to develop this borough plan has been opaque, veiled in secrecy, and that it should be stopped dead in its tracks. Why is this? Well, at the end of the Cabinet meeting on the 25th of January, the Chair, Mr Harvey, stated there has been a borough plan council working party in operation at which Conservative councillors had places. He asked Mr Aldington to give an update on that working party. Mr Aldington stated that there was 0 attendance at that working party by Conservative councillors. I was absolutely shocked, couldn't believe it, stunned. Went home, woke up the next morning, think, did I really hear that? These people haven't turned up to a meeting for 2 years. So I followed this up, and on following this up, I understand that attendance at the meeting was made, but quickly withdrawn after a short time, because there were no agendas, no meeting minutes, no scope for questions or answers. You know, so what kind of working party is that? So quite clearly, there hasn't been a proper cross-party consultation on this borough plan. If I move on to the public consultation, 7 sessions, 2 hours each. The centrepiece consisted of maps of the borough plan, not easily to decipher, and documentation that could not be taken away for further scrutiny. I was expecting the council to be open and transparent, to explain to people some of the challenges, perhaps talk about numbers of houses being built, what about greenfield sites, what about schools, roads, community concerns. None of that. None of the specialists were there to answer any questions. I would have thought the people who had prepared that would be proud to stand and talk to the public, but obviously they're not. And what I would say from other things I've seen, this council, it doesn't have the spine to openly share information with the people of this borough, unfortunately. So I think it's disgraceful. Of course, the irony of this, on one hand, this council recently rejected the NHS sustainability and transformation proposals due to uncertainty of the overall consultation process, lack of detail, and lack of clarity of expected outcomes. On the other hand, they continue to try and press ahead with this borough plan with scant regard for exactly those same concerns being raised by the people of the borough. Consequently, as an Nuneaton resident, I fully support the notice of motion tabled at this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Goss. Any member wish to reply? No. Michelle Condacour.
Thank you. Well, like the previous speakers have already stated, I also have a huge concern with the borough plan as it stands. At previous consultations going back to 2008, people were asked where they wanted housing placed, and the consensus from that first consultation that I took part in was that people actually wanted it small pieces all round the borough, so no one area was affected. Have we had anything like that? No. The other question that came up by the large number of respondents was questioning the numbers. Has that actually ever been explained? No, the numbers have just gone up and up and up. And it's absolutely ridiculous to think that we could possibly build that number in this borough. The other concerns, sustainability. For something to be sustainable, it's supposed to not... if you do something sustainably, you leave it in a good place, you don't make it worse for future generations. Well, we're already making it a lot worse for existing people, never mind future generations. The gridlock, obviously I know the St Nicholas, Weddington side of town best. Queues all the way back along the long shoot to Eastborough Way, down Eastborough Way and things. And that's before a lot of these houses have even been built. Only a small number, relatively speaking, have been occupied. And then we've got the actual evidence on which these numbers and everything else has supposedly been done with. Well, obviously, you're aware that I put in Freedom of Information requests about air quality because I just did not believe the reports that I was seeing. And lo and behold, yes, we find that the air quality report was altered. The words that were taken out were, and these are the words from the consultant, there will be a worsening of concentrations across the borough, particularly at town centre locations, including within the AQMAs, that's the air quality management areas in Nuneaton, which are currently exceeding the nitrogen dioxide annual mean air quality objectives. Now, I've been accused of false allegations and all sorts on the response from this council. That is fact. I've got the papers to show that that was removed from things. What else has been taken out from other reports that are supposedly the evidence? I really do not trust what we've been given. I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't like that and things. I expect the words from the consultant to be in the report, not words taken out and things moved around. I mean, it was said that it was changed so it wouldn't be taken out of context. What context could possibly be all,
Thank you, Mrs. Condicor. The time has gone
atrocious.
off. Does any member wish to respond? No? Thank you. That takes us on to item number 5, the notice of motion regarding the borough plan. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Ms. Clears. Tonight we have talked about a vision for Nuneaton and Bedworth in the budgets. 10 years, 4 consultations, and enough paper wasted for a small forest later, we now have Labour's final vision for our borough. So what does Labour's vision for Nuneaton and Bedworth look like? Well, a borough that is already the most densely populated in Warwickshire getting denser still, thousands of houses built with no thought for schools, doctors or dentists, the majority of housing development in one town and the employment opportunities in the other, Greenbelt decimated with almost 4,500 houses to be built on Greenbelt land, Bulkington village surrounded by development on both sides and growing by almost 50%, creaking infrastructure overloaded with yet more development, ignoring the unanimous policy of this council to put the Bedworth woodlands into the Greenbelt, and town centres that continue to stagnate with no overall master plan for their redevelopment. That's some vision. At the Cabinet meeting, person after person spoke out against the proposals in the latest borough plan document. Not just councillors, but concerned residents who had taken time out of their busy lives to register their anger and concern at your proposals. During that time, not once did any Cabinet member attempt to allay any fears that residents may experience, respond to valid points raised, or even look engaged with the residents. It just looked like Cabinet were desperate to move on to the next item. I wonder whether it was shame or embarrassment. In 5 minutes, it isn't possible for me to address so many issues that arise out of Labour's so-called vision for Nuneaton and Bedworth. I will leave that for others to raise, but there are 2 key areas of concern that Labour have failed on, and it is no wonder that the public outcry is one of anger, frustration and disbelief. Firstly, there is the lack of infrastructure. The infrastructure delivery plan is woefully inadequate. There are no maps of proposed new roads. Particularly with the new developments, there is little mention of any infrastructure upgrades that will help mitigate against the new developments. There are no specific projects with costings, timescales, sources of funding, or those who will contribute. For example, HSG 9, Golf Drive in my ward, there is mention of a green gym and a multi-use games area. That's it, for 621 houses. What about the roads? What about the schools? And what about the doctors' surgeries? According to the document itself, a weighty document, at page 12, traffic congestion, and I'm quoting here, is high across the borough, and Nuneaton has experienced the highest rate of traffic growth across Warwickshire. Particular problems occur on the Longshoot, Lutterworth Road, Tuttle Hill, etc., etc. All of these are sites where you are adding more development, and the document is silent on how we will manage the infrastructure requirements. How, for example, with the Lutterworth Road, Gypsy Lane, Bulkington Lane area cope with 700 houses in Bulkington, 621 in Whitestone, and 575 on Gypsy Lane. Not very well is my guess. Secondly, the apparent surrender to taking the Coventry overspill is nothing short of scandalous. The leader hides behind the duty to cooperate. Instead, he has taken it as a duty to give in to the demands of Coventry and ignore the needs of the residents that this council is supposed to serve, those of Nuneaton and Bedworth. Even more worryingly, the leader has admitted at Cabinet he hasn't even spoken to the leader of Coventry City Council about the Coventry overspill, and there is the potential for more than 2,360. He should be banging on Coventry's door and saying, loud and clear, that we will not accept any of their housing until they declassify more of their green belt and accommodate their own needs within their own boundaries. Why should we decimate our green belt to protect theirs? Other authorities in Warwickshire may have agreed to take additional overspill from Coventry. However, with their density, they can afford to do so. We already have 1,592 people per square kilometre, fact from the document, compared to the Warwickshire average of 277. Whilst it may make me unpopular with my Conservative colleagues in the other districts in Warwickshire, I am not afraid, unlike the leader of the council, of making myself unpopular and standing up for the residents that I am elected to represent. They should take more because they can afford to take more housing in their districts. I would be prepared to show leadership for Nuneaton and Bedworth, not the white flag of surrender that Labour are currently waving. Residents across Nuneaton and Bedworth are angry. That is why we have put forward this motion. We need a proper, detailed and thought-out infrastructure delivery plan that allows meaningful consultation. And we need to stand up to Coventry and protect the interests of the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth. Labour may not be prepared to do the right thing and defend our interests or show the leadership that this borough so desperately needs. If they aren't prepared to do it, then they should move out and let those who are prepared to do the right thing and defend our borough and take control of this council. I commend the motion to the Chamber.
Thank you. Is the notice of motion as printed seconded?
Seconded, and I reserve my right to speak.
Change to the...
Yes, debate.
Okay.
Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey.
It again, lots of abuse thrown about without actually looking at the facts. It doesn't work like the system that Councillor Wilson's suggesting, where you say to Coventry, no. It isn't specifically Coventry you're asking. It's the housing market area that we are legally obliged by our government, the Conservative government, we are obliged to take into account the housing market area. And there is a duty of cooperation in what is considered that area. And for us, it is largely the Warwickshire districts and Coventry. And the Memorandum of Understanding, which I refused to sign, and you know, there were members of the public in there at the time, and it's well recorded that I refused to sign it. And it's very interesting that Councillor Wilson says to me, show some leadership. It's exactly the words used by the Chief Executive of Warwick District Council, because I refused to sign and take 4,000 houses and wanted that proved by, well, as it was the use of consultants, Mr. Mayor. So by refusing to sign that, already that number was completely refused. But, you know, don't make things up about meetings at which you were not present. Look at the minutes, look at the things that were there, and if you want, I can give you the address of a member of the public who was sitting at the back. But in fact, the Warwickshire districts, Mr. Mayor, all Conservative run, are very angry with Nuneaton and Bedworth and still don't accept that we can't take 4,000 houses. And it doesn't work on the principle of me talking to the leader of Coventry. Of course I talked to the leader of Coventry, but it isn't a case of he asked us to take these numbers and I said no. That isn't the system. Let's stop this infantile. Well, I'll sit down, Mr. Mayor, because it will clearly continue.
I've just mentioned at the start of this meeting about members being respectful of other people, like a similar conversation I had the other night, Councillor Tromans. I'd appreciate that you took some notice of it.
So by making up a system that actually doesn't exist. It's the system that we have to use, given to us, forced upon us by the government. And in fact, Don't listen to me. Don't listen to anybody over there. Listen to your own Secretary of State, because he has issued a lot of threatening warnings of late, and he's actually not talking about places taking less houses, he's talking about them taking more.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Caroline Phillips.
Thank you. It saddens me to hear all this anti-Coventry talk. Are they not people? Are people from Coventry, do they not deserve shelter? Do they not need a home? There's been a rise in rough sleeping in England for 6 consecutive years. That's 4,134 people, double the number in 2010. And it's recognised that a lack of affordable housing is one of the main factors that is causing this. There are 104,000 people on the council housing waiting list in England for up to 5 years. There's 35,000 people who are waiting for 10 years. Since 2010, the number of under 35-year-olds who own their own homes has decreased by 344,000. 1 million more people are renting from private landlords for the same period. Now, I've said all this because most of us here have a home. Now, you mentioned, we're spoiling things for the future generations. Where are the future generations going to live if we don't build houses for them? I've got 2 at home that I'd love to get rid of, but they can't afford a house because there's the shortage means that the prices go up. Where are people's brains?
Thank you. Councillor Brindley.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Before I start, I'd just like to clarify our position on why we weren't on the Borough Plan Working Party, because I'm sure at some point that's going to be thrown at us once again. And it was because of the secretive nature of those meetings, the lack of anything being on record and being minuted, and as a result we chose not to take part. We heard earlier Councillor Harvey talk about his good old days as a maths teacher and how he likes to write about manners on his board. Well, I'm a geography teacher. I've actually got a degree in geography. We've talked a lot about qualifications tonight. I don't know if that means that I'm qualified to talk on something like this or not. But a word that I write on the board a lot as a geography teacher is sustainability. And we've already heard it a couple of times tonight, once from the gallery, once from Caroline Phillips. And the true definition of sustainability is about meeting the needs of today without compromising future generations. And I agree with Councillor Phillips that we do need some development in this borough. And we are not against development in this borough. But in terms of not compromising the needs of future generations, that development needs to be fair and it needs to be appropriate. In my lessons, when we're talking about sustainability, we look at 3 key aspects. It's a shame, actually, that this borough plan weighs, is it £5, 5 ounces or something like that, else it would actually make quite a nice exercise for my students to actually go through it and to try and look at what the issues are with sustainability. Is it environmentally sustainable? Well, absolutely not. We're building 4,500 homes on greenfield sites. What about the loss of habitats that will come with? What about those changes that we're making to the natural hydrological cycle and the likelihood of increased flooding that we're going to experience? We've already heard a lot in this chamber tonight about pollution and air quality. Building that number of homes is not environmentally sustainable. Is it economically sustainable? Well, we need to be building the houses where the jobs are. If we're building that many houses, we need to be creating jobs for those people that are going to be living in those houses. Where are they going to be coming from? We've talked about the regeneration of the town centres. What about looking at developing the town centres to include some housing in there? Perhaps the most important aspect of something being sustainable is the social aspect. Is this really benefiting the people of the borough? I would argue no. What about the impacts on health that we're likely to see as a result of the rise in those pollution levels and the increased traffic that we're going to have? Increasing the population density in an area that already has the highest population density in the county is not socially sustainable. The impacts on services, the frontline services, like the GP surgeries, the hospitals, the school places, none of this has been properly thought out in the infrastructure delivery plan. I'm urging everyone in this chamber tonight to put aside all of the party politics, to stop blaming other people. We need to look again at creating a sustainable borough plan for Nuneaton and Bedworth. And I urge everyone to support the motion on the table.
Thank you. Councillor Condacore.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Mayor. We really need to be talking about numbers here because we need to build every year around 300 houses in the borough. The actual government, the DGLC, said on the 2014 data we need to build 6,800. We have our own reports. 6,000 and something is how many we need to build over 20 years. That is 300 and a bit per year. Fact, statistics, government, DGLC for our needs. What we're being asked to build is 13,374. That is a massive increase. And that increase has been done by the planning policy team double counting all sorts of things. We'll add a few thousand for affordability. We'll add a few thousand for this. And we'll add a few thousand for Coventry. We'll add those, all that extra thousands are duplicate double counting. Yes, you can build more than 6,000, but there's absolutely no way you can build 13,000 unless you're a really, really prosperous town. Because the only way you build more houses than your population needs is if you can get people living here, if you got jobs, if you got prosperity. And this is the plan from 2011 onwards. We do not have a time machine. We have to build not 700 odd a year, we have to build 1,150 houses every year from 2020 to get to these numbers. That is 23 building sites all running at the same time. The numbers do not add up. The numbers, you haven't probably even read the numbers. What I found at the last borough plan is that Danny Oldington hadn't even read the report. I doubt that any of you on that side can actually explain how you get to this number, because the only person who knows how you get to this number is Kelly Ford on the planning policy team. There's nowhere does it actually explain in easy or even complicated mathematics how we get a need for such a vast number of housing. We're talking 30,000 people. How are we going to get 30,000 people under any credible economic plan to suddenly want to move into Nuneaton and Bedworth? And we're talking about taking the traffic on the Leicester Road Bridge from 30,000 cars a day, 15,000 each way, to 45,000 cars going over the Leicester Road Bridge. This is just a pollution nightmare. And we've now established that the pollution report has been modified by our officers, not by the experts, to actually say, don't worry, it'll all be okay, we'll have good cars in the future. We have a serious problem with the evidence base. I've asked to see the original version of all the documents, because I do not believe the experts. I've been through the experts for the GL Hearn, and it is double counted all over the place. And then we have Coventry. Well, Coventry is going to have an impact of Brexit. Coventry isn't going to go exponentially growing. It's going to have issues. The figures for Coventry gaining 80,000 people are mad. I went to the Coventry local inquiry. I've been through all the documents about the population and the employment. It is not credible. Coventry's population, particularly after Brexit, will not grow at 4,000, 6,000, 8,000 a year. It will grow. Young people want to move to Coventry. They're the young people who are living in Nuneaton now. We're losing population. Last official population stats for Nuneaton and Bedworth is we gained 145 people in a year. Not 1,000, not 145 people in a year. And those people were gained because people are living longer. We're losing our working age population. This town is dying under these chronic plans, and the whole evidence base, pollution report, rigged. Pollution will get worse, nothing will change. We have got a serious corrupt borough plan here. We have documents that are being changed, we aren't being given the originals, and the whole maths doesn't add up. Someone over there, take me through the maths. You get to 13,374. You can't do it because there's so much double counting. You're creating people multiple times. The whole plan is rotten and it doesn't bear any scrutiny. And I understand why you want houses for your young people, but the builders will stop building. As soon as on the Davisons or the Bellways, the prices start to fall, they slow the rate of house building. They build 50 a year. They don't build thousands.
I think some of the terminology used indicates a certain lack of understanding. I don't think, unless you're going to stand up in here and prove it, yet again, you have accused members of this council, officers of this council, and yourself, in effect, being a member of the council, of being corrupt, rotten, and things being rigged. I suggest you prove those words.
The words are on here.
Oh, lovely. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair. For about 2.5 years now, and I remember I'd been here about 9 months, and somebody said to me, one of the senior officers said to me, "Ian, you don't say very much." And I concurred on that because I only talk when I think I know what I'm talking about, when I've read loads of scientific data, research, etc. There's 2 points I want to raise. Somebody mentioned the word infrastructure, and I'm going to talk about the highways bit of that infrastructure and car ownership, car usage. Since the 1960s, there's been lots of research available about congestion on our roads in the Western world, including America. And one of the facts is that at any one time, there's only 1 out of 5 motor vehicles actually moving on the road system. So it doesn't matter how many roads we build, we will never get rid of congestion by building roads. The only way we can get rid of congestion, traffic congestion on our roads, is a modal change. Okay, we know what that means. The public transport system has gone downhill in the last few generations, and the ownership of private cars has gone up the opposite direction. Well, it seems to be a problem in this part of Europe and North America as well. But go back to mainland Europe, and they seem to have sorted it out. They've got the same narrow streets we have. The cities of towns of Belgium and Holland and Germany have got the same narrow streets we have, but they don't have the same congestion problems we have because a lot of them walk. A lot of them, Dennis knows what I'm going to say next, they pedal their bicycles. Modal change is the secret, not new roads. The second point I'm going to make, there's lots of big numbers been bandied around tonight, so I decided to talk about little numbers. 1 in 5 cars, remember that. The other 4 are parked up. All these houses we need all these houses because people need somewhere to live. Well, I think I'm correct in saying the last census for Nuneaton showed that each house has a population of approximately 2.1 people. 2.1, remember that, because lots of people in Nuneaton are married,
So let's have a look how many bedrooms there are in the thing there. Because a lot of the people that are married will share a bedroom, won't we? So there's lots of empty bedrooms in Nuneaton, lots of empty space in houses. I think the best household you could have would be a household made up of lots of generations. I'm talking about experience now because as my children were young, my parents helped look after them. It was great. Childcare, that was never a problem. I grew up in a house with 7 other people. We had to be tolerant of each other. My mum and dad were not in a hurry to get rid of us. They liked our company. They still do, or my mum does anyway. She loves having a houseful round for Sunday lunch. The more the merrier. So what I'm saying is, something that we could learn in this chamber is about tolerance, consideration for each other. Every meeting I listen to Helga, and the very first meeting when I listened to her, I thought, she's been a bit presumptuous there. We're all grown-up people. But I now realise that nobody ever listens to Helga's little speech at the beginning. You just want to bicker with each other. Well, we should stop bickering and look at the scientific data for a lot of things. Let's be more tolerant, more considerate, and get more people living in each house. That way, we could really kill the housing requirements. We've only got to increase it to 2.2, and it'll make a huge difference. Little numbers. I'd welcome him. Thank you, Chair.
I've said on 3 occasions now about people being respectful across the chamber. So it applies to everybody. It's just a friendly message. You've always got to carry on that. Councillor Tandy.
I'll try not to shout this time because it only sets me off coffee. I want to ask a question, Mr. Deputy Mayor. How many people, I've lived in this borough all my life, how many people in this chamber, across the board, live in houses that were once green fields? Several. But you want to stop them doing the same thing. We're all right, Jack. Don't matter about anybody else. You talk about roads. How many times, when planning applications for housing developments are submitted to this council, does the Highway Authority, the County Council, say they have no objections? Certainly they said it when the Gypsy Lane development came to the Planning Committee. A lot of us in this chamber will know a great old mate of mine, Councillor Derek Forward. Derek Forward had a fantastic analogy. Banana. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anybody, and he used to use it regularly. Councillor Harvey mentioned it, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Have you listened in the last week to your own housing minister? More houses, less powers for local authorities, and more support for developers. Doesn't say a lot for your recommendation this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Lloyd.
Danny was, as he is planning, asked about bringing people together to talk and try and resolve a lot of the issues between us on housing right across the piece. He formed a committee to sit, a working party, to join. He asked a lot of people to join. Some did, some didn't. I took over for 12 months from Danny, and I continued that meeting and sent many, many letters to that party sitting there to join the working party. Let me explain. You're a new councillor, lady behind you. You are a new councillor. You said nobody takes minutes and everything. You see that man there and that lady there? he sent or come to himself to make the working party quite legal, quite minutes taking, and he and his department took minutes of all the working parties that we sat on. That gentleman initially popped up, but he came. He came, but you've heard him screaming tonight, but he didn't say... If he'd have said some of the things at the working party at that time, Chair, maybe they consider... You've got a Conservative lead off a lot of things. If he'd have sat inside the working party and placed all these round this table, the whole of the people in there, the Conservatives, the Green Party and ourselves, could have sat down and discussed all these issues facing us, and maybe we might quite not have it as it is now, if they'd have joined to do whatever. But they continue to refuse to come to the working party. Tonight, because we've got the public and everything, they're now screaming they want the document changed. Now, why weren't they in the first place? Because we, and even Danny now has asked, we continue to ask them, all the parties, to join us to work together. I will mention it because you did in your little bit mention the woodlands. Yes, you did. I heard whatever. You know, Chair, that gentleman there had weeks off work and stood by that gentleman there, and they won a public inquiry not to build. I went to it and discussed it. We went there and they worked very, very hard. He put it all about the animals and everything. I remember him talking. And who was in power? You want to listen to this? Who was in power? The Labour Party. The Labour Party was in power. And do you know who the minister was? John Prescott. John Prescott, Labour, supported the public inquiry not to build on that area. And it's not Greenbelt, by the way. It was the Labour Party. You got that? Not the Tories, the Labour Party. And for 22 years... I'll give you 20, just in case somebody goes. For 20 years, Mr. Mayor, this Labour Party has stood by the working party of the Woodlands for 20 years in trust. And we still stood. We were not told to put the woodland. We were told the green belt in there. If the plan, and I was the portfolio, and if we didn't include these areas in there, the inspection could very well turn down the whole of the borough plan, and therefore we would have to start again, all that, and we didn't have that type of money. The green open spaces had to be put in. That's why we done there, and it is, and now, it'll take another, by the time the borough plan's adopted and the inspectors looked at it, it may not even be built on there. But it won't be built on, and I'll say this quite clear now, of experience, it certainly won't be built on for another 5 years. That's 25 years this party have stood by that action group. And what did they do at the election? They tried to blame the Labour Party for everything, which was totally misleading. Yes, I understand, but it's time, Chair.
Councillor Lloyd, could you just stop for a moment? Could I ask people in the public gallery not to be... take it... Mr Mayor, take it up with him on another occasion. Perhaps go to his surgery and speak to him.
I will be now, because I was aiming it as an individual, and I'll generally address myself.
Councillor Lloyd, I'm sorry to stop you again. I've asked you to be polite, like other people have complied with. No, you will not speak any longer from the gallery. Councillor Lloyd.
I have spoke to you this happened. Truthfully happened. And there's two people sitting... No, one's missing. He's gone. And Des, you got on extremely well with him, actually. Des and the gentleman there, who's now leading the Conservative Party, and it must be recorded in the minutes of these councils over the 12 months, stood up and said, why aren't you putting the woodlands into the plan? There's the man, and they'll be on the minutes, because he'll say no, so check the minutes over the years. Both of them stood up and told, we do not want the houses, and I was portfolio, they don't want the houses, Mr Mayor, in the north of this borough. Why aren't you building on the woodlands?
Thank you.
I'll finish on that. Now you've got it. There's the gentleman with the other one who kept saying, build on the woodlands, build
Councillor
on the
Lloyd.
woodlands.
Councillor
That's the end
Lloyd,
of it.
thank you. Mr. Yeah, I've got him. Councillor Copeland. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Planning is difficult. It's probably the most difficult thing we have to deal with within this council. So that's my opinion, and I think it's an opinion of a lot of other people. Because I have actually got members on this side who, they come on to planning, and then they go. And they actually say, oh, I don't like planning because it's difficult, you get dictated to here, there and everywhere by the government and whatever. Both sides, both parties, governments. And people find planning difficult. I'm going to make a little comment here, Chair. Now, it might be taken as disrespectful, but it's factual. Some members on the other side find planning so difficult that they can't even read their agendas and get here at 4 o'clock for a meeting. But that's another story. Actually, Councillor Bonner, I'm going to declare I've got a lot of respect for Ian, and what he said tonight, I'll go along with that, because he is a Green. The guy beside him, he's a Green. Simple as that. And in the same way, I have a lot of things for the leader of the Green Party. But the thing is, it's all wonderful what Ian says and what Caroline Lucas would say and all that, but getting it to actually happen. His colleague mentions earlier in the meeting on another subject about how wonderful Hinckley is, and it's growing in population. Well, how can it grow in population if it doesn't get houses? It must be getting the houses, and it is, because we know it is. So you sit here, you don't want with all your figures. Yeah, I don't understand them. Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't. I don't. And yeah, you couldn't even tell me exactly what the figures are. But how then do you go with Hinckley, growing population, loads of houses, but we're not allowed to have them here. The government want them. No, you'll do that at the end. That's the procedure, pal. I know, that's the procedure. You'll do that at the end. Now then, add my time on, please. The government, more houses. They're always saying it. In fact, as has been said by a few people, very recently. Councillor Condacor uses the word rotten. Everybody knows I'm a dictionary person, and rotten takes you to corrupt, which he uses as well, and corrupt talks about bribery and the potential of all that. Got to be very careful the words you use, my friend. Well, don't know about friend in that sense, but there you go. Now, we have a situation now in this country, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm one of the baby boomers, or whatever they were called just after. I've had a great life, and I have. And I've got a good living, even in old age, if you like, with pension and whatever. But the young people, this is the argument at the moment, are suffering because of that. And I agree with that to a certain extent. But who suffers when it comes to housing? These very young people. Because when houses, there's not enough of them, the prices go up. Who suffers when a house price goes up? Not the people in the middle or the top. They can sort of wangle it somehow and get up. It's the people that can't get on. And they're the ones who suffer. It's interesting as well that people talk about all these new houses and all these people coming from, Coventry and everywhere. Oh dear, we don't want new people, do we? Well, when I walk around the towns, as you would like to hear, not always said, but the towns and the villages of Bulkington, I hear loads of different accents. And why not? It's great. It's fantastic. These people weren't born here. I wasn't born here, but I love it here. So we need new houses, new people in the borough, and you know what? They'll become our residents. They'll actually be arm in arm with me. They'll be a fellow resident with me. What the hell's wrong with that? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor.
Hinckley's growing at 1%. I want us to have the right rate of growth, about 0.5%.
Thank you, Councillor Connicar. Councillor Golby.
I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to take the Coventry aspect off the table. I don't want to talk about that. What I want to talk about is something quite close to my heart, which is infrastructure, funnily enough. But before I do, I'd just like to clarify a couple of things. You go on about infantile behaviour, yet you try and throw at my union membership at every opportunity. I'm happy to talk about it out there. I've said it before in here. I am a union member. It doesn't bother me at all. If you want to discuss it, that's fine. Not a problem. And the other thing that I've noticed, I've been playing a little game of bingo as we've been going along. The stock answer for everything seems to be Conservatives, WCC, Tories, the government, and it's not us. I mean, I could have shouted out bingo about 15 times in this meeting. It's a little thing that I like to do in boring meetings at work, but that's another thing entirely. So the infrastructure, well, or lack of it, should I say, one of the overriding things that's been brought to my attention by my residents when I've been speaking to them, and also that they brought to the attention of members of the consultation, was that it's not the housing as such that's the issue. It's not the building of the properties that's the issue. It's the fact that there is nothing in the background to support them. There's no roads. There's no very little on the doctor's surgeries. We know this from the consultation, from the cabinet meeting. Pretty much everybody got up and said about that they weren't happy with it because there's nothing there, that you can't see it. A question was asked by one of my residents at the consultation was, how do you seriously expect us to go through all this information and find out where it's legally compliant or not? And the expectation is apparently the residents should read thousands upon thousands of pages and then become planning experts and draw up points of legal non-compliance. I mean, it's just a bit ridiculous. There's something else. Sorry, what was that? There's something else that's been brought to my attention. With the roads. The roads in my area are already chock-a-block, as we all know, which is why you've been trying to shoe on the Bermuda Bridge through for the last couple of years. But there's nothing in the plans or any of the documentation to tell the residents the numbers. I've managed to get hold of some details of the numbers. So if I'm looking at currently an evidence base on Walshingham Drive, for example, Walshingham Drive currently has 810 vehicles a day. The plans that you've put into place will actually increase that to 7,600 vehicles a day. If you look at peak hours, you look at 10% of overall vehicle use. The peak hours on the proposal is actually as much in a peak hour time as the entire day that they have now. That's 7,600 vehicles. Athol Crescent is another one that's going to get battered. Radnor Drive, 7,500 vehicles. I mean, these figures are phenomenal. And you expect these vehicles to run on housing estate roads. Now, I'd like to pick up something that was mentioned before about infrastructure. The Highways Authority can only look in isolation. So, for example, Weddington, they've had to look at everything in isolation, each estate in isolation. If those estates were looked at in their entirety, and they are going to link up, if they were looked at in their entirety, they would automatically qualify for major infrastructure. Because they are being looked at piecemeal, they don't qualify for major infrastructure. So again, you're relying on rubbish estate roads to funnel vast amounts of traffic. I see where you were coming from with your modal transport change. You know, it's not going to happen anytime soon. We need to sort it all out in in time, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. It's unsustainable. I would like somebody to justify to my residents why they should be happy with 7,600 cars driving past their house when currently they get 800. So can somebody please tell me how this is acceptable? I mean, I just don't believe it. And the justification for the Bermuda Connectivity Project pedestrian facilities. The Bermuda Connectivity Project delivers benefits for pedestrians in terms of improved access to West Nuneaton. Well, how can you do that when you're taking away pavements, you're taking away crossings, and you're putting 4,000 cars down the street? How is that improving pedestrianisation?
Thank you. Councillor Aldington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, as I think we're supposed to address you as you're in the points I'll make, and then I'll get on to some facts, because I know we like facts here. It was mentioned that we are building houses. Actually, Mr. Mayor, we're not building houses. I would welcome that, because if we were building houses, it would mean we'd be building council houses, affordable houses. We will not be building any houses at all. Councillor Brindley mentioned about secretive meetings. It was so secretive that their previous leader actually chaired a meeting where some original housing figures were agreed. He chaired the meeting. That's how secretive it was. Councillor Goulby mentioned about how are residents supposed to answer these questions. I totally agree, and it is ridiculous. It's part of the National Planning Policy Framework. It's government policy. There's another one for your little bingo thing there you can add. So therefore, it is ridiculous. Those are questions we have to ask in law. Councillor Condacor mentioned Coventry. He made a big play about Coventry. A few years ago, he actually supported their original plan, which was for 10 or 11,000 houses. And guess what, Mr. Mayor? That was roundly shot down by the Planning Inspectorate because, guess what? There were not enough houses. So I'll come on to the various points then that are made in the motion. A fully costed, itemised and detailed infrastructure delivery plan. The Council has produced an infrastructure delivery plan which contains details of specific schemes, timings, costs, funding source and responsible agency, as well as risks and contingency. The information contained in the document has come from the service delivery partners delivering the services and the studies that have been undertaken to inform the development of the plan. The Council has worked with providers to understand existing infrastructure provision within the borough, the pressure new developments will put on that provision, and what will be required to enable providers to continue to deliver a service. There are inevitably gaps in the document because it is not possible to know in 2017 what funding pots will be available in 2028. The document is, however, a live document that will be monitored and updated on a regular basis through the Infrastructure Planning and Delivery Group. The critical thing to note here, Mr. Mayor, is that all of the service providers operating in the borough are aware of where development is proposed during the life of the plan and are therefore able to use this to inform the development of their own services and plans to ensure that the infrastructure needs generated by new development is met. Fully engaging with our strategic partners over the planning and design of new developments, the Council has established an infrastructure planning and delivery group chaired by Alan Franks to work with and influence the investment strategies and infrastructure programmes of the various organisations that are responsible for delivering services and facilities within the borough. The group was established at the start of the plan making process and continues to meet. Officers have and continue to meet organisations on a one-to-one basis in addition to this. The group has benefits for all of those involved, which is reflected in the continued engagement of the organisations. Over 30 different organisations have been involved in the process, covering a wide range of infrastructure considerations, which include transport, utilities and waste, community and leisure and culture provision. I've got a list of all of those strategic partners who have been consulted as part of the borough plan, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to read them out, but I have got copies in case the opposition would like to see one. A realistic target for development. The Council commissioned, along with the other authorities that make up the Coventry and Warwickshire housing market area, Councillor Harvey's already mentioned that, an independent assessment of housing need for the area. The study, which is called the SHMAR, was undertaken in line with government guidance and provides an objective assessment of need based on facts and unbiased evidence. The outputs of the study were a housing target for both the borough and the wider sub-region. The Council is required to take an evidence-based approach to plan making and as such has used the evidence to inform how many dwellings should be planned for during the planning period. A plan that puts the interests of residents in Nuneaton and Bedworth ahead of the interests of Coventry residents. It's already been said, Mr Mayor, but this council was the only Warwickshire authority not to sign the Housing Memorandum of Understanding at the end of 2015. The council didn't sign it on the basis that the available evidence suggested that the borough could not accommodate the total 4,020 it had been asked to take from Coventry. Unlike Tory-controlled Warwick District, which is taking 6,640 houses. Unlike Tory-controlled Rugby District, which is taking 2,800 houses. And even, unlike Tory-controlled North Warwickshire, which has very little connection to Coventry, unlike this borough, they are taking an extra 540 houses. Finally, Mr Mayor, I'll leave you with the words of the Minister for the Department of... It's DCLG, not DGLC. If I can indulge me just 2 seconds, Mr Mayor.
Be quick.
At West Midlands LGA event, and he was appalled that England had only built 150,000 homes per year in the last 20 years. And that it should be, and these are his words, at least 450,000 that other countries are building across Europe. As a result, they will be bringing planning policy to release extra land to be built on. And Mr Mayor, that probably will mean Greenbelt.
Councillor Longdon.
Because he's just done my bit, so he put my hand up too late. The issues that Danny's just outlined, I can fully agree with that. But it was mentioned over there about 2008. Well, let's look at 2008, shall we? And 2008, 9, 10, actually. When we had the spatial strategy, and the Tory group, put out what they called the core strategy. And mark this well, you've been moaning about consultation. The way that you dealt with consultation was you put papers into forums, community forums in those days. The community forums didn't like them. And it was Mr Burtonshaw, I think, who was the portfolio holder, was he? Or he was certainly something to do with that. He was on our forum. And the next meeting we had when we was talking about this, he leaned over to me and he said, "Don't worry about it, it's gone away." You didn't even have the gall or the guts to stand up and admit that you're just going to abandon the core strategy. You did nothing about it. You put it in a drawer and it's disappeared. Where is the responsibility in that? You haven't got any. You could talk to us about the responsibility. You just let everybody down because you didn't have the bottle to go through with what we're having to do now. And the numbers was just about the same in the spatial strategy. In fact, they're probably worse than what he's got on the board. I think it's about 14,000 or something, wasn't it? So we've gone all through that, and you then come back with the unmitigating goal and say realistic target for development. Where's the realistic? What's realistic in your terms? You don't know, you haven't put it down, you don't even know where you're going with it. As far as the fully costed itemised, you mentioned NHS, doctor surgeries. Well, first off, you might not know, but you should do, because I've stood up here and said it, there's a shortage of GPs. They've got to be trained. And then when young doctors are trained, they've got to be keen enough to go into GP practices. And the will is not there at the moment. There's no great rush to go into general practice. And why? Why? Another one for your tick sheet, Claire. Because the government are not putting the funding in. Because the government are doing the dirty on the health service and reducing the funding. June showed me a thing today about that's in the news today, which I will take off with great glee, and I'll send you copies. See how you think about it then. But the issues that you keep raising are down to, or the problems that are down to, the government. The government do not give local councils, local authorities, the powers to do anything. The power sits with the developers. That's where it is. We have to face the fact that the developers will hold the whip hand if we don't deliver, if we turn down planning applications, as we've been told on the planning committee a number of times. If we turn them down, they go to appeal. It will cost the taxpayers of this borough lots and lots of money. 300 houses, if it goes to appeal and we lose, you're looking at about £250,000. So you want to do all this, when it gets to planning and everything else, you don't want to plan, you don't want anything to do with it, but the issues are, you should have had something to do with it, and it's too late to moan now, because you had the opportunity and refused to take it.
Thank you, Councillor Longden. I've got 4 people that haven't spoken yet that have indicated to speak. Councillor Guthridge.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
It's going to be a question of constitution.
Chair, I withdraw the motion. I just don't feel very well at this point.
Councillor Guthridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Born in Nuneaton and lived in the borough all my life, and for the last 16 years have lived in the Whitestone ward. I'm very saddened and disappointed for my residents of the ward of Whitestone with this huge development of 621 houses. The infrastructure will not cope with this amount of extra traffic. At this present time, we are already gridlocked at the double roundabout in Whitestone, as it's one of the main routes out of Nuneaton. In the borough plan, which weighs £5, 5 ounces English, but if I'm a European, it's 2.4 kilograms, it said if this proposed development goes ahead, we will get the provision of a doctor's surgery or financial contribution to the NS Clinical Commissioning Group. Our doctor's already full and he's looking for suitable land to expand. So, if it goes through, will they guarantee that he'll provide the facilities for the doctors? Another little thing, sports facilities. I'm an armchair sports fan, as you can see. We have no playing fields in Whitestone. They're at St Paul's. That's Attleborough. Will an area be set aside to provide an outdoor gym, football pitch, mugger? These are just a few of my many concerns with this overdevelopment. I close with my views on the consultation. Tonight, the consultation at Alston Grange, 5:30 to 7:30. We as local councillors cannot be there to meet with the residents as we're at this council meeting. Very forward thinking on the controlling group. I must finish and say I'm not against development, but when we have them in the correct area and the correct infrastructure. I sit down now very disappointed for the residents of Whitestone. Thank you.
Councillor Ian Lloyd.
Well, I've heard a lot tonight. I've sat and listened, and I've heard, less coming from local Conservatives. I see on the news more coming from government and all the well-to-be people. You can put that in your chart as well. I look around this room and I think there's 6 councillors in here that were around the time when the Bedworth Heath development and the Woodlands and the local plan was going through the last stage. I think also looking around this room, there's probably 2 of those councillors, there is 2 left, that went through the whole process, including sitting at public inquiry, yes, with the Woodlands Action Group. Not the one that's sitting now, but the original one. And yes, we went against the Borough Council and we voted it, we got our own way and the Woodlands was put to bed. Now, I live in a ward, Bedworth Heath, where we had a development called Bedworth Heath Development down Bluebell Drive. We've heard a lot about infrastructure. I represent a ward called Camp Hill on the other end of the borough that has had more development than most areas of this borough. Camp Hill development has took some considerable time. The clue is in the hill. It's a lot more difficult to develop around Camp Hill, and it's lifted that whole area. The Heath development had a lot of infrastructure put in. Everybody was shouting about the Heath development. It won't work. The lake's going to flood. The roads are going to be clogged. The shops ain't going to come. We're going to have them from Birmingham, them from Coventry. I was at the meetings. I got shouted down in the latter days by the action group from Bedworth Heath. But I supported it. And the reason I supported it, go and have a look now. You've seen Camp Hill. Camp Hill's improved considerably over the years. You've got in Camp Hill, you've got the new village centre. You've got the community centre, the envy of the borough. How many times have I been round this borough and councillors have said to me, you've got everything in Camp Hill? How many times? Down in Bedworth Heath, the infrastructure. You keep talking about infrastructure. Well, let me tell you, the infrastructure does come later. It comes at the planning stages. That's where it comes. And I've worked through that with the Bedworth Heath development, through the planning stages, with the local development plan for that area. The shops are now full. They weren't when it started. The road has been widened. We've got a new lake. Yes, we've lost some greenfield sites, green fields. And yes, we've lost part of the pit heap. There is still a piece there that we can't develop on. But it's improved that whole area. And I don't care what anybody says in here. It did improve that area. You've only got to look at it. The people that live in those houses, they're from Birmingham, they're from Coventry, they're from Leicester, they're from all over the place. Half the guys work with me in Birmingham. Yes, they commute. They didn't want commuters, they didn't want people from out the area. The very, very people you need to encourage into the area to bring business. I remember one lady at one meeting stood up and turned around and says, you lot don't want me, but I'm going to bring my business into this area. I'm going to open a shop. And she did. She came and she opened a shop. She moved into this area. We've got engineers. We've got quality investigators. We've got professional people. We've got everybody over on that estate. It works. It worked there. It worked in Camp Hill. It can work, but you have to get it right. But what I hear more and more and more, and especially tonight in here, is we don't want it. You can go to any area of the borough. You can go to anybody. If you're going to put development in the area, yeah, they ain't going to want it. I understand that. I get it. But it has to go somewhere if you're going to move the borough forward. Now, I've evolved over the years. I've not always been in favour of all development. But unless somebody can come forward, these action groups, unless they can come forward and say, we're going to put it there, you need to put it there, then I ain't going to listen to them. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Gran.
Well, said on the other side of the chamber today, and lots of references to things that happened in the 90s and 80s, and not much reference to what's happening today and in the future. I mean, for example, some things I may want to remind people of. Councillor John Glass did once say in a newspaper that Nicholas Chamberlain would turn in his grave if houses were built on the woodlands. You said that before. Councillor Copland, interestingly enough, said that he was never against building houses in the woodlands, despite the fact that he voted to return the area to Green Belt, along with the other members of the council. Yeah. And now we've had Labour Party members admitting that there's massive queues on Newtown Road, which is an area that would perhaps have even greater queues, and with nearly 700 houses being built in the woodlands. And one strange thing I've heard tonight is that just because political parties kept their promise for 25 years, that we should be thankful for that just because they decided no longer to keep their promises. That is a very unusual thing to be hearing. But talking about going forward in the future, looking at what's being proposed in the borough plan, I can see several particular problems with some of the sites. For example, if you were to build an industrial estate off Goodyear's End Lane, as is being proposed in the borough plan, as well as houses off School Lane, then that would create a lot more traffic, including HGVs. The only ways that they'd be able to get to the motorway are through Bowling Green Lane, through School Lane, or through Goodyear's End Lane and through Ash Green. And that would not help the quality of life in those areas at all. And with regards to building houses in the woodlands, the Borough Council have now admitted that there's a massive flood risk there, yet they've kept in the part of the woodlands in the borough plan that floods the most, including one of the roads that floods the most. And one of the particular parts of the allocation for nearly 700 houses is the area north of Buttercup Way, where, as we can see, there would potentially be a junction from the Elliott Gardens estate onto the proposed new estate in the woodlands. That area is over an abandoned railway and over a brook, and I'm told that to build a bridge there from that end of the woodlands to the other would cost over £1 million. This isn't being considered in the infrastructure at all. And because that area of the woodlands is undevelopable logistically, that must reduce the housing allocation that could potentially be put on that site. So there's a lot to think through. I'll be encouraging as many residents of Bedworth as possible, and I know that the group will be encouraging residents from across the borough, including Nuneaton and Bulkington, to respond to this plan. It's been kept very low-key in the past. I think at this consultation we've had more and more people coming forward. I've never seen so many people engaged in the borough plan, and that's partially because we've been feeding it publicity on this side of the chamber. And because of that, I'm confident that the residents will put forward all the evidence, but when this goes to the government inspectors, they'll begin to ask questions, they'll begin to wonder if the housing targets are correct, if they really need 13,000 houses in this borough. In fact, it was the ex-cabinet minister of the Conservative government, Brandon Lewis, who said that he doesn't want local councils building more houses than they need to in their areas or have any need to. So that completely goes against the whole, let's blame the Tories thing. I mean, we're not in the era when it was Labour that was opposing the woodlands and John Prescott was in power. That was long before I could vote. I was probably at primary school at the time. But things are changing. The people in Bedworth are waking up. So I think we're going to see a lot of change over the next few decades, regardless of what happens with the borough plan. And I think if this plan goes ahead, flawed as it is now, unchanged, then a lot of people will come to face a lot of hardship through what's being put forward in the plan, and they'll remember who it was who pushed the plan forward in the first place and who it was who helped them fight it.
Councillor Phillips. It's Councillor Neil Phillips.
Yeah, I'm pleased, Danny, and I would suggest anyone else here does get a copy of the information he's put out. You did have to read it very, very quickly, but let's just wrap it up quickly in the fact that, I totally support the fact that they've got an infrastructure delivery plan ongoing, tick. It is a live document. You can't predict what is going to be done in 30 years' time or 20 years' time. There will be changes. Houses will be built at a gradual stage. Like Keith says, we might not even get to 13,000. There might not be a need. It might not happen. But we are where we are from the fact that a plan has to go to the inspector. We can't wait any longer. And comments were over there. This is a once-in-a-generation, negating responsibility when you were talking about our borough plan, the budget, concern for your residents. Councillor Wilson, dereliction of duty, what vision, shame, standing up, leadership. Well, you should have led like Des O'Brien did and turned up at the working party. Councillor Aldington would not have to go through all of this because you would have known what was going on. Housing development is going to be a pain in the neck for those that live next to it until they get used to it. I lived down the Golf Drive as well when I was a youngster, when they built Hoylake Close. They built all the way round Golf Drive. Did we move? Well, I suppose my parents might have done, but it might have put their house prices up as well. I come from a ward right, that is the most dense ward in probably in Warwickshire, I would think. Hectare-wise, people, traffic going through the town centre is horrendous. I want it sorted. I need the plan to go to the inspector. And if it's wrong, and we've got the inspector turns around and says, well, your figures are all wrong, let him say it. If we've got them in the wrong place, let's be told. But don't keep whinging on about it. Just get on with it. Show some leadership.
Thank you. Right, I think it's fair to say we've given that a good thrash around. The motion has been proposed and second. Well, he had the opportunity.
I reserve my right to speak.
We're almost there. Let's just be this last bit of patience. Councillor Tromans, you've got the right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I don't know, and I think we need to come back on them. But before I do that, let's just remember what all this is about. It's about the motion. It's not about all the getting people to look the other way, the red herrings, Councillor Harvey wants to talk about Coventry and whatever. No. So, a plan, by most people's view, when you speak to the public on the doorstep, and I know that's something we do rather more than you seem to, is that it's an unmitigated disaster, because they can't understand it. We've heard speaker after speaker after speaker say, the numbers don't add up. It's gridlock. How can that be right? It's crazy. You know, unrealistic, unsustainable. These are words constantly coming. Nobody can make sense of it. And here's the answer that we're going to come to. You're not supposed to. It's not what we want. We want fair and honest planning. We believe that there needs to be some development. We need to put a lot more jobs in the borough. We need more houses in the town centre. And yes, we need more housing developments. We need thousands of houses, maybe 6,000 or 7,000 houses. We do not need 13,000 houses, and whatever number we have, whether it's 13 or 6 or 60, whatever, it needs to have proper infrastructure, because otherwise it doesn't make sense to anyone here, anyone out there. The only people it seems to suit is the collection of people opposite. So why is it that everybody thinks it's a sham, there's no trust, they don't believe it? Well, we only have to hear what was said tonight. If we're going to have a history lesson, let's think back to a particularly successful campaign I remember before one election. Hammer the nail, hammer the Labour lie. Well, let's just hammer 6 of them very quickly now. Yeah, Labour promised not to build on the woodlands. You promised not to, you're building on the woodlands. 2, the Working Party. I'll give you the truth. When I was first elected 3 years ago, the very first thing I said in this chamber was I extended an offer to the Labour group to say, we will join the Working Party. All you have to do is be honest and transparent. Keep minutes, open it up to public as much as is possible, not whip your members to vote a certain way, give us proper facts, be open, be transparent. Oh, they didn't like that. Howls of derision, voted against it. Didn't want to know. The offer was made. We were happy to do it, but we're not there to give them the fig leaf, the appearance of propriety, when clearly there is none. When clearly people believe that it's a sham, that there's no trust, no openness. That document was utterly impenetrable. How can people, as Councillor Golby said, come up with fine points of law based on planning decisions on the back of that particular document? It wasn't designed to be understood. The planning drop-in meetings weren't designed to facilitate as many people as possible. We've talked about that tonight and the limited numbers of them. So where were we? Oh, yes. It's the Tory government that wants to build houses. All governments want to build houses. There is virtually a crisis of housing in London, and to a certain extent some of the South East, where it's desperately needed. It is not desperately needed in Nuneaton, nor is it our place or our job to try and house the entire whole of the rest of the UK. Yeah? We are not, and to Councillor Phillips, I don't know where she's gone, but to try and overbuild to the extent where you torpedo the housing market in Nuneaton so that it collapses, so your kids can buy, 2 kids can buy a couple of cheap houses. Oh, that's charming. Forget the other 100,000 people that live here. You know, we could all see our house prices crash as long as your kids get a couple of cheap houses. That's fine. And then we've got Councillor Harvey. Oh, yes, he wants to talk about Coventry and whatever. The fact that he only took 2,000 from the Labour big boys in Coventry, and you know he only did half what he was told. It's 2,000 so far. We don't know what's yet to come. And Councillor Oldington, the Conservatives agreed with our numbers. No, at no time have we ever agreed with 13,000 or anything remotely like it.
Mr. Mayor?
Can you sit down, Councillor Traynor?
I don't think I ever said you agreed with our housing figures. What I said was your previous leader, Councillor O'Brien, chaired the meeting where original housing targets were put forward from the Borough Plan Working Party to the Cabinet. Yet again, Councillor Tromes.
I'll get my time back. So, to be clear then, he did not agree to 13,000, verifying that. Point number 6. Yes. Oh, Councillor Longdon, GPs, yes. What a disgrace. Any government that's allowed it to get to this level should be utterly vilified. Oh, but wait, they take 7 years or more to train. Who was in power in 2008 and the years leading up to... 2010. Yeah, but mine...
Councillor Tromes, just give me a moment,
yeah.
please. We've been very patient. It's been a long night. I'm sure we all want to go home. So, if you could...
Yeah, see a GP. They've been in the job for some years. They've got some experience. They were trained long ago. And if not enough of them were trained long ago, that's not the current government's fault. So is it any wonder, as I say, that people don't have trust in the whole process? It's clearly opaque. It's clearly not engaging with people, not giving them confidence. So why is that? Well, as soon as we start looking at the numbers, they don't stack up. Well, why is that? Why wouldn't the controlling group want a proper borough plan? You need to...
What a load of smoke and mirrors we've had tonight from the party opposite, twisting history to suit their own political purposes. Let me remind them of some of the true facts of history. The Woodlands, Councillor Lloyd, and I don't use this word very often, what Councillor Lloyd did today was lie. He accused me of saying something I never did, and that is precisely what...
Go back through the minutes the year I was in office as a portfolio holder and check what the councillors and the previous leader and he said at these meetings, because they must be recorded. Then if you call me a liar, then you will go, the monitor officer here, we will take action against you. It must be recorded in these council minutes in the year I was portfolio.
I think that's a matter to be taken up outside of this room at the moment. But what I will say is there's been a whole list of accusations made at the end of the meeting, knowing that people can't respond to it, and I don't think that's a good way to be performing in the chamber.
To people tell deliberate, misleading statements about me, I have been incredibly patient. I waited so that I could have the opportunity to rebut some of the issues which were made against me. I think that's only fair. I stood here with then Councillor Des O'Brien, and we did not propose building on the Woodlands, as he well knows. He's trying to deflect the issue because Labour have been caught with their pants down, and now the people of the Woodlands are revolting against Labour rule and orthodoxy. What we said was that your methodology was incorrect and that what you were doing over the Woodlands defied scientific reason. That was the professional opinion of the planners. That doesn't mean I want to build on it, far from it. We are the only ones on this side who actually want to keep up the promise we made to the people of the Woodlands. I voted as one of the first acts I did when I was elected in 2010 to support making the Woodlands greenbelt. As far as I can see, it's only me who's keeping my vote, and the rest of you over there are not keeping yours. That's the reality of the situation. Now, they say we could have effected change within the Borough Plan Working Party. If you go back to the minutes, and I haven't got the exact minute, but it's there in black and white, at a meeting, which again we called actually, then Councillor Shepherd got up, William Shepherd, got up, declaration of interest. He declared what was the most startling declaration of interest I'd ever heard. I have been whipped on how to vote on the Borough Plan Working Party. We took all the gumph, we took all the bump about working with you in secret, as Councillor Condacor used to accuse us of. When he got onto it, it wasn't so secret then. But we took all the gumph, we tried to work with you in good faith, and then we had that bombshell. You shattered all our trust and faith in your system. We gave you the opportunity to put forward a decent, fully legal proposal to actually put the Borough Plan Working Party on a proper constitutional footing with proper minutes, proper agendas, the opportunity for members of the public to come. Yes, there would have to be some things done in closed session because they were financially sensitive. We accepted that, but the vast majority of things could be done in the open. We made you an offer. What did you say? No. And Councillor Oldington didn't keep on asking me when I became leader or when I was deputy leader of the opposition to keep going on the working party. He didn't beg me or anything like that, and that was it. And then I gave him my answer and said, if you are willing to do so on the terms that it is fair and open, be my guest, we'll join you. But the answer was no. Now, we heard from one member opposite that infrastructure comes with planning applications. That's the worst possible time to have infrastructure design. You need the...
The explanation is I didn't say that. What I did say, it becomes at the planning stage when you turn around and you actually do the development plan for the area. It's different. You do the development plan for the area, then it goes to planning afterwards.
If that is, and I accept your explanation. But the point is that the infant good enough to say, oh, it'll come 10 years down the line. We are consulting with residents now about where we're going to put development. How can residents answer the very questions which you're putting to them about whether 621 is acceptable in Whitestone, whether 700 is acceptable in Bulkington, whether 1,500 and more is acceptable in Arbury, whether 600 is acceptable in Slough? All these applications, people deserve to know what's going to happen, and you are refusing that. And this motion calls for us to put it right. And I will call for a recorded vote because the residents deserve to know you're cocking it up.
Clearly a recorded vote been agreed. Alan?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the vote is for the motion, the substantive motion. Councillor Aldington. Against. Councillor Aldington against. Councillor Beaumont. Against. Councillor Beaumont against. Councillor Bennett. Not here. Councillor Bonner. For. Councillor Bonner for. Councillor Brindley. Councillor Brindley for. Councillor Copland. Councillor Copland against. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doherty apologies. Councillor Doughty is left. Councillor Elliott is left. Councillor Gazane. For. Councillor Gazane for. Councillor Glass. Against. Councillor Glass against. Councillor Golby. Councillor Golby for. Councillor Gran. He's left. Oh, Councillor Gran for. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Gutteridge is gone. Councillor Hancock's. Councillor Hancock's against. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey against. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Haynes has gone. Councillor Jackson has gone. Councillor Kondarka. Councillor Kondarka for. Councillor Tony Lloyd. Councillor Tony Lloyd against. Councillor Ian Lloyd. Councillor Ian Lloyd against. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Longdon against. Councillor Margove apologies. Councillor Caroline Phillips. Councillor Caroline Phillips against. Councillor Neil Phillips. Councillor Neil Phillips against. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret against. Councillor Margaret Pomfret. Councillor Margaret Pomfret against. Councillor Jill Shepherd. Not here. Councillor Tracy Shepherd. Not here. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tandy against. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Tromans for. Councillor Watkins. Councillor Watkins against. And Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson for. Yes, the motion is lost.
Okay. I think I get the last word. The motion is lost. Can I thank everybody for their attendance and declare the meeting closed?